Welcome to the Train Like a King podcast, dedicated to all things paddling, designed to help paddlers of all levels get motivated to get out on the water. Tune in, grab your paddle, and let's train like a king. Hey guys, before I get into this podcast episode, I just want to say that we have a new website for Train Like a King. So if you haven't checked it out, go into my bio on Instagram, click in and sign up. There's a good way to communicate. We have a TK community that you can join, and we're looking to post more content there, tips and tricks of paddling and all sorts. We also have new merchandise available too, so check that out. Enjoy the episode. Hey guys, and welcome back to another podcast episode. On this episode, I'm going to do something a little bit different. Something for all my listeners looking for some paddling tips. I know the past episodes have always been about a particular event. You know, there's still learnings in that, but this episode I want to do something a little bit different. Now, the question I want to address is, what is the number one thing you can do to improve your paddling performance? You know, if you could choose one thing, if I could choose one thing, basically the simplest answer that I can give you, the simplest answer, and you already know this, is time on the water. So time on the water, you know, there is no true secret. To an extent, yes, there is technique. Yes, there is better ways to surf, understand different crafts, all of this type of thing. But understand that it's the time on the water that teaches you these things. People say, you know, I often hear people talk about paddlers who, you know, do their own thing and they don't worry about technique, and they just train, but they never really focus on the technique. But the thing is, remember, technique or paddling technique is not a separate thing from time spent on the water. And the reason is because it's one thing to look good on the water in terms of doing everything correctly, but without the time, you know, the time on the water, which not only allows you to practice technique, but also allows you to build the specific characteristics, to adapt to the training, to grow the muscle memory, to improve your energy creation of ATP, your efficiency, your fat utilization, grow your capillary density of the sport specific, paddling specific muscles, increase your body's ability to produce oxygen, you know, deliver oxygen and nutrients to those working muscles. The only way to achieve that is time. Now, it's a different story if you're coming from a similar sport. Say you may be coming from outrigger and going to canoe or kayak. You've already spent a lot of time developing that specific muscle development, the aerobic development, the anaerobic development, these types of things. So maybe the path of learning a new craft isn't as difficult. Learning the technique is easier if you're already fit and healthy, and even better if you already understand the water, the surf, and these types of things. However, here's the key thing that everyone should understand is that, yes, technique is important, but every single paddler is different. Every single paddler is unique. We can only, in a team environment, we can only do our best to synchronize as much as possible, but we never ever really become perfect, if that makes sense. I always think about, I've watched Tahitians, all of the top Tahitian paddle so much that if all I could see of them was a black and white silhouette, I could probably still tell you who that paddle was based on the individual technique difference that exists between the different paddlers. Now, I also say this because even the top teams, take one of them, for example, Shalva, who have been very dominant for the past 3 years or longer, decades even. Technique has changed within the team itself, which begs the question, is technique important? If the best technique, the technique that belongs to the fastest crew, changes year to year. Now, at one point in time, Shalva'a had a super fast stroke rate, and everyone was going on about speed, stroke rate, attacking and catch, and all these types of things. Fast forward to now, there's a super long stroke rate, slow, exaggerated out the back, not so heavy on the attack of the catch or the hinge, but more rotational dominant. Now, it's the same team, still winning. What's the difference? Still putting the time in. The time is the key to success. There are, I would say, accelerators to improving your performance. There's being with someone that has already figured out the path, or they've been taught the path, a particular path, to help fill in the gaps of telling, the smallest of tips can help in terms of what you should do in this, when you're in this scenario of surf, or how you should sit, how you should stroke, or am I doing too much or doing too little? Yes, there are, for sure, there are coaching tips out there that will help you accelerate your performance, no doubt. Even help you to motivate you, to push you, to help you validate some of the things that you may already do, or help you work on things that you're not so sure about, for sure, yes. However, hard work beats talent at the end of the day. You can have all the talent in the world, but if talent stops working, that young, hungry kid who's working hard is bound to catch you, bound to pass you. So time on the water is that missing link. It's that missing link that we all know that if we simply just increase the volume in a controlled manner, of course, but hey, no one ever really complains about pushing their own limits and figuring out what was actually possible, because they only get better for it. They may suffer one race or two races, but they've broken a plateau or a limit they thought they once had, and then they can reassess, and that's what it's all about, really, when it comes to endurance racing or even sprinting. It's about breaking barriers, and sometimes you got to hurt to do those things. Yes, and the older you get, the more experience you get, you start hearing people talk about quality over quantity. Sometimes it's just an excuse for not wanting to do the major load that you may have once done. take the likes of, say, Kevin Siron Jerusalemi or Steve Tehotato, or a lot of these champions who have been around for over 10 years, been at that top level and competitive for 10 years. Don't just think about what they're doing now, because they may not be hitting anywhere near the mileage what they used to be. But their skill and their development is already there. It's embedded in the muscle. Maybe look back at what they were doing when they first started. Look at the heaviest volume years, the time, the sacrifice, and the dedication to their paddling. Look at those years and mimic those if you're wanting to one day reach that same level. So at the end of the day, there is no true secret. I always talk about the fact that I didn't get to Tahiti, or I didn't paddle for a Tahitian team until I was at least 2 or 3 years deep into racing into Tahiti. And prior to that, I had no real influence of Tahitian technique, so I brought our whatever technique I learned back in New Zealand, I brought with me. And I managed to make a top 10 finish at the Super Aito. And it wasn't until after that where I was invited to paddle with a Tahitian team and learned more about the technique. So taking that into account, the technique is not the biggest issue. Of course there's refinement, but if you're paddling 3 times a week, only 3 times a week, and maybe that's 3 hours a week on the water, then, and that's what you're comfortable with, and that's fine. There was definitely a time, back as only as far back as 2013, where I was doing the same. But you have a lot of potential in just merely increasing the amount of volume that you're doing. Don't worry about the intensity and what special workouts I should be doing. Yes, there's good ways to plan training, plan intense sessions and easy sessions and so forth. There's a time to sprint and practice 500 meters and 250 meters and stuff like that. Yes, I understand, but remember, number one tip, learn how to spend more time on the water. Increase your week by 10% each week, controllable manner, and then have an unload week somewhere, and then just feel the benefits. Feel the benefits. Feel yourself develop into a endurant machine. Of course, it doesn't come without sacrifice, because the more time you spend on the water, the more time it takes away from other areas in your life. But it comes down to how much you're willing to sacrifice. Now, the reason why Shalva are the paddlers and the team that they are is because they start training February of every year, and they train basically every weekday together. Now, if your team does that, and I'd be surprised if they didn't paddle in sync, Whereas, and now think about your team and how much time you spend together. How many times a week do you actually get together and paddle together as a team? This contributes to overall synchronicity. The more time you spend together, or the more time you just spend in a V1 or an OC1, the more specific development you're going to get, and you're going to learn on your own for sure. And when you rise to the top, or you start running races, remember that your technique, whatever got you there, can now become the benchmark. So what I will say is, yes, take what you can from coaches, from advice, from this podcast, or from whatever. Take bits and pieces, but take the things that work for you. And then, but the most important thing when it comes to racing is believing in yourself, believing in what you do, believe in your feeling. And if you win, you're the benchmark. You now become the benchmark. Just understand that. So hopefully this podcast was something different. Thank you guys to the diehard listeners out there that listen to every episode, and really enjoy when people come up to me and let me know that they've been listening and they really appreciate this content. So always looking for new topics too, so feel free to reach out and send me a topic that you want me to talk about. So catch you guys on the next episode. Thank you for listening to another episode on the Train Like a King podcast. Check out trainlikeaking.com for training plans, merchandise, and coaching opportunities. If you haven't already, give us a follow so you don't miss another episode. Catch you on the next one.